tell us a bit about your journey to pregnancy.
Absolutely. I was going to say it has been a bit of a journey as well, I guess, from kind of the initial stages of, yeah, let's get married. Yeah, let's have a baby. And then a couple of years on and there's still no baby. I guess, it's quite common for a lot of couples now to go through this. And I guess everybody kind of deals with things differently. Myself and my husband Simon have always been very open and honest with people about what we've gone through to have our baby. Other people are different and prefer a more private life, and that's fine. But I do kind of personally feel that because other people have been so open and honest with us, it has really, really helped us. So if I can kind of share our story a little bit, it might help other people as well. So yeah, we had been trying for a baby for a couple of years. I was always very laid back about it, not being overly maternal at all. I thought it'll happen when it happens. And as I said, it had been a couple of years, and then we kind of thought, maybe we should look into this a little bit more to see if there are any underlying problems that are preventing us from getting pregnant. So myself and my husband went along to our local GP, and they referred us to the fertility clinic in Aberdeen. Pretty quickly, we got an appointment and went in for some initial checks. They were very, very thorough. We went through medical family history and diet, lifestyle, everything. My husband's results came back all clear, and mine came back to confirm that I had a low ovarian reserve, which is basically my ovaries weren't producing eggs. So it was pretty clear from then that conception was going to be difficult for us, near on impossible for us naturally. But we were given a 5% chance of IVF working. But we're kind of very fortunate actually that we live in this area that Aberdeen has a slightly lower criteria to meet before you're entitled to IVF on the NHS. And I was just on the cusp of that. So it meant we were entitled to one cycle of IVF on the NHS. So we kind of started that journey between October and November last year. We were very, very fortunate that we sort of bypassed the waiting list, which we were told would be a year. And that was mainly because the state of my ovaries was so poor. And they thought if we waited around any longer, probably any chance of IVF working would be pretty remote. So we were really lucky that we got an appointment through within sort of 6 weeks, and we started on the IVF journey. Unfortunately, IVF didn't work for us. My ovaries just didn't respond to the stimulants at all. And at the end of the stimulation part of the process, I still only had one egg on one ovary, and that was it. So it was a tough time. Lots of different feelings and emotions. Myself and my husband, openly discussed things and got other people's opinions on things as well, close family members. Egg donation was sort of mentioned by the hospital as well as an option. But we decided we would go ahead and try IUI, it was insemination basically. So that was suggested as a bit of a potluck shot, to be honest. We were told that the chances of it working would be pretty remote, but it meant that it would protect our one IVF cycle, and we would try IVF again in January. So we did the IUI on the 4th of December last year, and it worked. So I guess to everybody's shock, I got a positive pregnancy test result within 14 days. We had an early scan at 7 weeks back at the fertility clinic, and everything was looking great. So yeah, from that point it was all excitement, and everything that had gone before had kind of been forgotten about. And we were just excited to be finally pregnant and starting the pregnancy journey.
So tell us now about what it was like for you being pregnant, having gone through the IVF and it been successful.
Yeah.
How were you feeling after that then?
Yeah, so obviously very excited. Both me and my husband were chuffed a bit. Pretty much from the start, I started to feel unwell. The normal sort of morning sickness, which my mom had told me, you know, she experienced with both me and my brother. So it was inevitable that I was going to feel some morning sickness as well. But my sickness was morning, noon and night, and it went on for the full entirety of the pregnancy,
Yes.
which wasn't very fun. But I was on medication and everything to kind of deal with that as well. And actually for me, lockdown was a bit of a blessing in some respects. Shame that I didn't get, you know, to spend as much time with my mom while I was pregnant and see close family and friends. But at the same time, when I was probably feeling my worst, I wasn't having, you know, that fast-paced life of commuting to work and other activities after work, and, you know, just a busy lifestyle, which I normally lead. So actually, lockdown was a bit of a blessing for me. And it meant I could just take a slower pace, take more care of myself, and just, you know, slow down and just sort of enjoy the pregnancy as much as I could. I was working from home for that time as well. It was quite warm. I had the normal sort of symptoms, swollen feet, sore wrists, you know, a lot of symptoms that people generally don't tell you about, or you don't read about anyway.
Yep.
And it was actually while I was pregnant that I joined your pregnancy yoga class online.
Yeah. And I remember you feeling very sick a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Swollen ankles.
I know. But actually that class was an absolute blessing, because during lockdown there were no groups, there were no antenatal classes or anything like that going. So it was actually brilliant to be able to log on a Wednesday night and at the start of the class share how we were feeling, talk about, you know, our emotions and what we'd experienced that week. And it was just a great opportunity for us to check in with ourselves, but also to hear how other mums to be were feeling as well. So yeah, that was really, really great. So yeah, the pregnancy, it felt like a lifetime at the time, but now looking back, it passed in a flash. It passed so quickly. Although it was lockdown, I still had the normal midwife checks and went through all the sort of the normal tests that you'd go through as well. So during our 12-week scan, which fortunately my husband Simon was able to come in with me, which was great. They tried to measure the neck measurement in the baby, which can be an indicator of Down syndrome. But they weren't able to take that measurement just because of the position that the baby was in. So that was fine. We kind of didn't really think a whole lot of it. We were then offered a blood test at, I think it was around 17 weeks, which we took. And again, didn't think too much of it.
No.
And then had a phone call from a midwife in Aberdeen maternity hospital to say that the blood test had come back at a 1 in 46 chance of Down syndrome. Again, we were quite shocked at that. Spoke to lots of friends and family members who had recently had babies to see, you know, what sort of, ratio did they have? What chance did they have when they had that test? And it was an absolute mixture of different numbers kind of thrown out there. And a lot of people had said to me, no, it's just a number. It doesn't really mean anything. It could go either way. Like, you just don't know. And during that phone call with the midwife, we were offered to make an appointment for an amniocentesis, which would be more of a diagnostic test to kind of, I don't think it's 100% accurate, but it would give a better indicator of whether the baby was going to have Down syndrome or not. But because my husband and I had gone through the IVF and IUI, we decided that actually any chance of miscarriage, we just weren't willing to take. It could have been my only chance of being pregnant, so I just didn't want to risk that. And we kind of dismissed the idea of going for a private harmony test as well. We had the resources and means, very fortunate in that respect, to have the choice to pay for that private test had we wanted to. But we sort of decided that it wouldn't change anything anyway. And, you know, all the decisions we'd made up until that point had been the low risk decisions. And we just felt that it wouldn't change anything. We wanted to enjoy the pregnancy. And we just agreed that actually we would put that back to the back of our minds and we would get on with the rest of the pregnancy. And we would play with whatever cards we were dealt, really, as parents. And that's what we did. So the remainder of the pregnancy flew by. I was
Yeah.
still being sick. It wasn't an enjoyable time for me. Yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't an enjoyable time for me, to be honest. But I guess a lot of pregnant ladies are the same. You know, it's a happy time, but you don't feel great a lot of it. So, but yeah, that was the pregnancy, really.
Good. Okay. And nice that you kind of forged some connections with other pregnant women through the pregnancy yoga. So that was great. And so nice that you took this approach to your your testing results, that you're ready for a baby, you'd gone through the IVF, and whatever the outcome would have been anyway, you'd have still continued with your pregnancy, and so there was no need to really do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess everyone's different from that perspective. I guess if you had other kids, you might want to find out. So, you can be, ready for that and prepared as much as you can. But because we didn't have that, and Simon and I are fairly laid back and easy kind of going through life, and whatever challenges are thrown our way, we deal with them. And we just kind of adopted that attitude. And we were just fortunate to be pregnant.
Yeah. Good. Great. So tell us what happened next. What about your labour and birthing experience? What was that like?
So yeah, I was prepared for a natural birth. As part of your yoga classes, I've been practicing the breathing techniques out with the classes. Myself and Simon had signed up to a hypnobirthing, just an online course as well, which I thought was really helpful, actually. Probably more so for Simon to kind of understand, how the female's anatomy works during birth, and why the up breathing, down breathing are so important, and things like that. So that was really good. So we went through that, and I was still quite adamant a natural birth. But then it came apparent that the baby just hadn't moved. So Jay was actually transverse, so breech, but transverse across my tummy. And he was like that for pretty much the whole pregnancy. And, he moved, he wriggled, but it wasn't how I expected it to feel, to be honest. The midwife, every time I went for my appointment, she was asking, "Oh, is a baby kicking a lot?" And I was like, yes, but it's more a movement. He probably wasn't as active as I had expected him to be. But again, that was probably down to the fact that I was working from home. I was sitting at a desk probably for a lot longer than I should have been. I probably, I wasn't as mobile as I would have been had we not been in lockdown.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, he was a big baby as well. So yeah, the movement wasn't what I expected. But again, everything, all the other tests that we had came back fine. We went for our 20-week scan, which was a bit of an experience because at that time we were in lockdown, so Simon wasn't allowed to be there with me. He had to FaceTime from the car, which was, looking back, I probably should have been more nervous about that than I had been. I think we go into things a little bit blasé. And fortunately, they did a thorough check of the baby, and again, there was no issues found. And at that stage, because often babies with Down syndrome can have quite serious heart conditions, I thought, well, at the 20-week scan, the fact they've not picked up any problems, chances are the baby's not going to have Down syndrome. And that was kind of, what we thought. So again, we just followed the process, went to the midwife, spoke about the birth plan. And I said, look, I know the baby hasn't turned, so I'm quite open to things now. Deep down, I had my heart set on a natural birth. I wanted to be in Inverurie. I didn't want to be in hospital in Aberdeen. But in the end, that's where we ended up. We did have an appointment booked to turn the baby, which we went along to, and we actually asked the consultant to remeasure the baby. I just didn't have a great feeling when we turned up for the appointment, and luckily enough, Simon stepped in and just asked the consultant, look, before you start the procedure, let's just remeasure the baby, confirm that it is going to be a big baby, and see what it's actually looking like in terms of whether it was actually going to be viable to turn the baby or not. So I think had I turned up for that appointment on my own, I probably would have just gone through the procedure and not challenged things. So I guess that's one message I'd like to get across, is that you know, ask the questions, get as much information as you can. And actually, it's okay to challenge the medical professionals as well. And you just have to go with your gut. If you don't feel comfortable with something, then
Yeah.
don't do it. And actually, you do have time to make decisions as well.
Mm.
At a lot of the scans, you know, you're sort of told all this information on the spot. You go speak to a doctor, and then you're asked, right, okay, what do you want to do? But actually, you need to take your time and think it through and discuss it with your husband or your birth partner, and just decide what is actually going to be best for you.
Yeah. And
So
gathering the information we talked about yesterday, giving yourself to gather the information, not just from one source, but perhaps other sources as well that you're comfortable
yeah,
coming from.
yeah, that's it. So I mean, we didn't go through with the procedure in the end to get the baby turned, and the consultant had remeasured the baby, confirmed that Jay was going to be big, and said there was no point actually attempting the procedure anyway, and there wasn't really a whole lot of room to turn the baby.
Yeah.
So after that, it was looking like our only option really was going to be a planned cesarean.